Hey everyone, this is Ryan Casper Cook here, and I'm coming to you with the second part of the xLights Around the World video tutorial series. And on this video, I'm going to kind of focus today quickly, show you how to map the basics of the Greatest Showman sequence I created over to your own home to try to give you the best results and make sure your display looks as good as it can with this sequence. So at this point, you should have already taken care of the audio file. In the first part of the video series here, you'll see Jordan created a great tutorial on how to purchase, download, and edit the Greatest Show audio file. This will need to be completed before you move forward in this video, as we will need that edited audio file in order to map this over to your house. It's very quick and simple, and the link to that video should be in the description of this video. So please make sure you have your final audio file first before moving forward. Okay, so now that I have my audio file here ready to go, this is the edited version. The next thing I need is the actual sample sequence that I created, which is also available on the Google Drive, the xLights shared Google Drive folder. If you need a link to that, that'll be posted in the description of this video. So you'll want to go ahead and download the Greatest Show Final Edit. It's a compressed zipped file. So go ahead and make sure you have that. And I've got my displayed directory here. The first thing I'm going to want to do is uncompress the Greatest Show zip folder. So I'm going to go ahead and extract that. Now you may get a warning message that pops up. One of the singing faces, I believe, is a duplicate. You can either replace or skip it. Either way is fine. So there we go. I have the Greatest Show Final Edit extracted. Within that folder is the Greatest Showman. And this is all the files you need in order to copy this over to your own display. So what we're going to want to do is take our edited audio file, and I'm going to go ahead and just copy that because I've got a few different show directories here I'm going to be showing you guys. But make sure you paste that in to your actual show directory area so we can link that to the sequence later. I'm just going to go ahead and pop that into all of these so I have them ready to go. Okay. So now that I have the Greatest Show sequence extracted and ready to go, I want to hop over into xLights and kind of show you how the sequence is laid out on the model and grouping levels. The grouping levels are going to be quite important when it comes to mapping, so I want to explain a couple things there. Open up my xLights. I'm going to go ahead and change my show directory over to the extracted file that I just extracted. And this is located in Greatest Showman. I'm going to select that folder. Now that I've pointed my show directory over to the Greatest Showman, I want to show you guys a couple things on the layout screen here, and mostly the model and group levels. This is what's going to be really important to know. On my sequencing, I have two whole house groups, and you're going to need to make sure you have two whole house groups on your layout, because that is very crucial when it comes to the whole house video effects and different things the way I sequence. So in this example sequence that I created, you'll see we have a model group called Whole House No Yard. This group needs to be everything that's basically on your house. Nothing that's in the yard, just the house only. If you have P10s, matrices, whatever you have on the house, basically the flat front part of your house, everything that's there. Then I have a second whole house group, which is literally your whole house. Every single element that you have. So those two are the two crucial ones that you're going to want to make sure you have set up on your own layout, and we'll get to that in a bit here. Then I have groups for arches, candy canes, floodlights if you have them, mini trees, outlines. We have our snowflakes, and then of course we have our singing faces as well. Now everything in my sequence is basically a la carte. So when you come over to map this onto your house, you can pick and choose what models and what groups work best for your home. And we'll go through a couple examples to make that a little bit easier. But in this case, I have created and imported in for your reference the singing bulbs and the singing faces on 2 matrices, and then also a singing face on a megatree. So if you want singing faces, you can use one of those 3 options. The lyric tracks are already included, so you could use your own singing faces. They're there for you in case you want to use them, to try to make this easier for everyone. You don't have to use them. Same thing with P10s and matrices. If you don't have any P10s or matrices, no problem, just don't map those. The sequence will still look great on your own home. So basically everything in this layout screen is in groups. Make sure on your own house, you're going to want to make sure all your main, as I call smaller items, candy canes, arches, mini trees, stars, snowflakes, all your outlines, they should all be in one group. The way I designed this was to be very universal, and it's all done at the group level, so that way it'll work on everyone's display. I did not sequence anything at a submodel or at a node level for that reason. So a lot of people have, for example, vertical lines as a group, and then they have horizontal lines as a group for their house outlines. Well, those can be all grouped together into one batch. So keep it simple. Everything just needs to be in its own group. The only things that do not need to be in their own group and should be independent on their own are your megatrees and matrices if you have them, or P10s. So those 3 items need to be separated on their own or not belonging to a group. So again, just to recap here, we have our whole house without any yard effects. Just the house face alone. We have our second level, which is whole house, which is everything in your display, minus singing faces if you don't want those included, which in this example I do not include those. Everything else can be on its own group, and they should be grouped. Arches, candy canes, snowflakes, spinners, stars, mini trees. The only items that should not be grouped and should be independent only on the model level is your megatrees and your matrices or P10 sections. Those should all be independent. Okay, so now that we've gone through kind of the models and the groups and how you should have those set up on your display, we're going to go into the sequencer, and I want to show you a couple things on how I have things stacked and how they should be stacked on your house to get the best outcome from this sequence. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the sample sequence that is included. And if it's the first time you're opening up either the generic sequence that I created or your own house layout, it may ask you to link to the audio file. Go ahead and just make sure you link that over to the correct edited version of the greatest show, to make sure you have the right audio file and that everything matches up and syncs up properly. So now you can see when you open this up, there's a lot going on here. The first things that are important are the timing marks. The only 2 timing marks I included on my portion of the sequencing was the basic and the VU meters. The rest of these are all for singing faces. So you may not necessarily need these. I'm going to go ahead and just condense them down by double clicking them right now to get a little bit more room on the screen here to show you the rest of this. So as you can see, the first level I have here is 01, whole house, no yard. Your layout on your home should be the same. You should have your whole house with no yard on the top level. After that is 02, whole house. That's everything. So make sure no yard is on the top, everything else is on the bottom. From there, everything else can be however you want it. In this case, I have all my groups, my arches, candy canes, floodlights, mini trees, outlines, snowflakes. And then you'll see I have my Mega Tree 1, Matrix, P10, Spinner, Stars. Those are all independent. They aren't in any groups. And then my last Mega Tree with the singing faces on it. So the only two important things to make sure you do: create your whole house, no yard. That needs to be on the top, and then whole house needs to be right under it. After that, all your groups and individual Megatree Matrix P10s can be in any order. It doesn't really matter at that point. So that's a little bit of a briefing on how the sequence is layered by groups and models. From there, once you understand that, it'll be a lot easier to map this over to your own home. So to get started with that, what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and close this down. I don't need to save that. I'm going to go ahead and change this over to my personal house, my xLights display. Okay, so in my personal house here, you'll see I have my layout ready to go. This is my Christmas layout, and in this instance, like I mentioned, I'm not going to show you how to map the matrices on here because I want to show you what it looks like without all the nets and no singing faces. This is just the basics on how to map over the individual elements onto your display. So the first thing I'm going to want to do, I'm going to go to my default mode here and see all my groups and look through my groups and make sure I have everything set up properly how I want them. This does show all my matrices on it, but I will not be using those. So in this instance, I have a whole house. I call it all house. That's everything, so that's good. I need that. I have all house, no matrix. I don't necessarily need to use that at all for this sequence. I have C9s. So in my sample sequence, there are no C9s. So what I'll probably do is I'll just map maybe the outlines to my C9s. So I'm going to want to use that group. C9's top and bottom, I don't need to use those because they are independent from one another, and I just need the group level of all of them at once. I've got an all outlines. I'm going to go ahead and need that. I've got my arches left and arches right. I've got my candy cane group. I've got snowflake group. I've got fire sticks in my yard, or what I call fire sticks. So I'm going to have to figure out something to map over to those. As you'll notice as we go through this, the demo sequence that I created doesn't necessarily have all that type of elements you might have. You might not have all the elements that are in the demo sequence. So it's really up to you to really pick and choose what effects you want to map over to the elements that maybe you don't have in the demo sequence. I'll show you that in just a minute here, but the main thing is I want to make sure is, all my smaller items are grouped into one grouping folder. I've got my Mega Tree and Star. Now I do need my Mega Tree on its own, so I'm not going to end up using that group. I'll just use the Mega Tree on its own and the Star on its own as a model only, not a group. My mini trees are in a group. I have all yard, but I don't really need that. But there's my house only, no yard, all house, no yard. So I am going to need that. Then I also have some gift boxes. I'll have to figure out what to throw on those. But everything looks good. I've got all the folders I need, all the groups I need to make this happen. The two big ones to make sure, like I mentioned prior, you want to make sure you have an all house, which is just everything. And you also want to make sure you have all house, no yard. So we'll go ahead and get started here on mapping it over and watch how quick this actually is after you have everything set up properly. So the next step in mapping it over would be to actually get a sequence started. So in this case, we're going to want to go File, New Sequence. we're going to want to create a musical sequence. Make sure I'm in my right show directory here. This is going to be for your show directory. I'm going to use the Greatest Show edited audio that I've already purchased and edited. And in this case, I'm gonna go ahead and only do 20 frames per second. Feel free, you can use 40 or 20, it doesn't really matter. The only thing that makes a big difference is your render time. 40 is gonna give you a lot smoother transitions. I will probably end up using 40 on my show, I usually do, but for the sake of rendering time right now, this is a large sequence file, and some of the rendering times can get upwards of 2 to 6 minutes on this, depending on how many items you have in your display and how many things it's mapping it to. There's a lot of video. It's a pretty large sequence, but for the purpose of the tutorial, I'm just going to go ahead and do 20 frames per second, and I am going to not do any of my models and just quick start and add in the models I want to map to. There we go. So before I go anywhere further, I'm going to go ahead and just save this. And I will just save it as The Greatest Show. Okay. So now let's go ahead and get our models and our groups in the track here. So we're going to go to Edit Display Elements. And we're going to go ahead and pick out those groups that we talked about earlier. So I know I'm going to need that all house model. I'm going to need C9s. I want those to be in it. I want all outlines. I want my arches. I want my candy canes, snowflakes, fire sticks. The mega tree and star I do want, but I need the mega tree on a model level and not in a group. So I'm going to skip that one. Same thing with matrices. I need those on a model level and not on the group level. I need mini trees, and then I need this all house. So now if I go down, what else do I got in here? Arches, I got my outlines, I got my C9s, got my candy canes, got my fire sticks. Oh, I need my gift boxes. You want to make sure you pick out everything you need in your display that you're going to want. I need my mega tree and my mega tree star. I got my mini trees. I got my snowflakes. Tombstones are Halloween. I got my outlines. And here's all my window matrices, which again in this tutorial I'm not going to map over. I'm going to go ahead and leave those blank, but I'm going to go ahead and add them in here for the next video. They just won't show on this video. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move all that over. Now if you remember from earlier, the most important thing is making sure that your house without the yard is at the top. Then your entire house. From there, it doesn't really matter how you have the groups or models laid out. Whatever's best for you. So now that I have that all done and ready to go, I'm going to go ahead and save it. And now I'm ready to map in my effects. So the first thing I want to do is go up to Import and Import Effects. I want to navigate to the sample that I created for everyone here, the Greatest Show Final Edit, Greatest Showman. And I want to make sure I'm going to be importing an XML file. I'm going to be importing the Greatest Show, and I'm going to open. So that brings up our mapping. And from here, the first thing, we can import all the timing tracks. In this case, I'm not doing any singing faces, so I just need basic and VU meter. The rest of the timing tracks relate to all the singing faces. So now if we look down below timing tracks, these are all the models in my show on my personal house. Here's everything that's available out of the Greatest Showman sequence. So the first thing we've got here at the top level is All House No Yard, which on my personal house I have it as All House. So I know that needs to go here. I should rename that for you guys, but I know that this model group is my Whole House No Yard. I know that All House is my entire house. I've got arches here that I've got arches left, okay, but I also have arches right, another group. So I can drag that same arches right over to there. You can map and put more than one time onto your own house. So candy canes, go on to my candy canes. Ethel, I don't have an Ethel, I don't have singing bulbs, so I don't need to map anything there. I don't have any floodlights. I don't have a Fred or a Lucy. I do have Matrix, but I'm going to skip that for now. Megatree, so I do have my Megatree, so I need to find that on the model level down here, and I believe I have that just under Megatree right here. So I'm going to map the Megatree over. There's also the Megatree with singing faces. I'm not going to map that one because, again, this tutorial is not to do with matrices or singing faces, just the basics. The Megatree topper over here is a star, so I'm going to go ahead and pull one of these stars over to that. Where else am I here? Mini trees. Go back up to my groups. I've got my mini trees. Outlines. I don't have a P10. I don't have a Ricky bulb. I'm skipping Singing Faces Matrix 1 and 2. I do have snowflakes. I don't have a spinner, and I've already used up the one star that I have. So you can see I still have a few things missing. For example, all C9s. So I need to pick what I want to map onto my C9s. And in this case, I'm going to use, I think the outlines make the most sense the way my C9s are set up. So I'm going to drag outlines over to my C9s. Fire sticks. Same thing, those are out in the yard. You know, I think the best thing for those would also be outlines. So I'm going to go ahead and use outlines on that. Tombstones, I don't have those. Those are Halloween. I don't know why they're showing up in here. Let's see, what else am I missing? You want to make sure you get everything on your house. Gift boxes, I have those around the house. You know, I think actually I'm going to use the floodlights programming for my gift boxes. Okay, and I got my mega tree, my mini trees are done, my snowflakes are done, my outlines are done. Everything's done it. So I've got everything mapped how I want it. Double check, triple check, make sure. Also, we're going to go ahead now, before we click OK, let's go ahead and save our mapping. And I'm going to go ahead and just save this back into my default show directory here, my xLights directory, just so I have it in case something happens. You don't have to come back and do this again. You can just load your mapping and it'll all funnel where it needs to go automatically without you having to go through that again. So I'm going to save that. And now that I have that all done, I'm going to click OK. And you'll see that xLights automatically went ahead and pre-filled all the effects into the appropriate groups and models. Again, I skipped the window matrices because I didn't want to show those in this video, but everything is here. So now we're going to go ahead and save and let this thing render. Like I said, it'll probably take about 2 minutes here, and we'll go ahead and let this save up, and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, and we're all done rendering. That took 150 seconds, so just over 2 minutes to render the entire sequence, which is about what average I've been getting on the render time for me. So let's go ahead and see what it looks like. Let me open up my preview, and let's give it a play.
Ladies and gents, this is the moment you've waited for. You've been searching in the dark, your sweat soaking through the floor. And buried in your bones, there's an ache that you can't ignore. Taking your breath, stealing your mind, and all that was real is left behind. Don't fight it, it's coming for you, running at you. It's only this moment.
Okay, so far everything's looking good here. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I am going to skim through it. It looks like everything is mapping up properly as it should. Again, there's no matrices on this one, but I just wanted to show you how great the sequence does look without matrices. And how easy it is to really map those over once you understand the model and grouping levels. Okay, so everything looks great. We're going to go ahead and save it, and you're ready to go. So it's that easy to map everything over. That's excluding the matrices, which we'll cover in the next video. But that's all there is to it. So I hope that was extremely helpful for you and helps you get that mapped over in the best way possible so your house shows as good as it can. So I'm going to go ahead and close this one down, and I'm done with it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, and I do want to show you one more example. I've got Jordan Nash's house layout, and I want to go ahead and map it onto his because I've never seen his layout before. He doesn't have any matrices either, so let's go ahead and open that up, and I just want to run through that real quick and show you another example. So I'm going to go ahead and change my show directory over to his house. So the first thing I'm going to be looking for here on Jordan's layout is I want to see how he has his groups and everything set up. So I see he has all tree, which looks like I'm not going to need that one. All his candy canes, snowflakes. This looks like a good one I could use for all house with no yard. It looks like he has some icicles dangling down and some other stuff up in the trees here. So this would be a good one to use for all house, no yard. He's got his icicles, he's got his outlines, he's got his roof, which I don't need. He's got his tree and star combined, but I'm going to go ahead and use just the model level of that, not the group. He's got verticals, which I don't need. Windows, flakes. He's got a lot of customized groups that I don't need to use. Okay, so he's got pretty much everything except the only thing I don't see that I'm going to need is all house, which is everything. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and add a group here. And I'm going to call this one whole house. And on whole house, I'm going to go ahead and just make sure I get everything in here. Okay, so I got the whole house model group created, and I've got everything in there. So we have our whole house, and then we have our house without the yard stuff. Everything else is grouped or on a model level, so we've got everything we need there to move forward. So I'm going to make sure it's saved, and we're going to go ahead and create a new sequence and get this mapped over quick. So we're going to do a musical sequence. We're in Jordan's show, greatest show, 20 frames, no models, quick start. And we got to go in and edit our display elements. We want our candy canes. We want all of our flakes. We want the holly. We want house all, which in his case is all house no yard. We want the icicles. We want the outlines. We want the tree. We want the star. We want that whole house that I just created. And I think that is everything. Let me just double check, make sure I didn't miss anything. We've got canes, flakes, the holly, all house no yard. We've got icicles. Oh, we're missing this zigzag tree he has up here. I'm not quite sure what that is, but I need that added in. Perfect. So we have everything we need to map over from the greatest show sequence. I'm going to go ahead and rearrange this real quick. We know that our house without the yard needs to be at the top. We know our whole house needs to be under that, and the rest can be however you want it. So I've got everything I need there. Go ahead and save it. Okay, now we're ready to map over the effects. We're going to import effects. We're going to navigate over to the greatest show demo directory, and we're going to import our XML file, the greatest show. Now we're going to map. Again, in this instance, we don't have any singing faces, so I'm just going to do the basic and the VU meter marks that are needed. First thing we have available up here, we need our whole house no yard, which he calls house all. We've got our whole house, which goes to whole house. He doesn't have any arches. He does have candy canes. No singing faces. Doesn't look like he doesn't have any floodlights. No matrices. We have a mega tree, which he calls tree. And then we have mini trees. We don't have any mini trees on this one. We do have outlines, so let's go ahead and map those over. No P10, no singing faces, and snowflakes. We do have snowflakes. No spinner, but he does have a star on his tree, so we're going to put that there. And what else are we missing? So I think for the holly, what I'm going to do is actually use the same effects that I use on the spinner. So I'll just throw that on there because that's available. And again, it's universal. It doesn't, everything on the model level over here besides whole house, you can mix and match, put whatever effect you want on whatever groups or individual elements you have on your house. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. The only thing to keep in mind is whole house. Those are the only two that need to be the way they are. Okay, so we have the spinner on the holly. We've got the icicles, which I'm actually going to use the arches on. I'm going to use the same effect that I used on the arches on the icicles. And then we have the by tree. So that, I think, actually I'll just use the mini trees on that one. That might look kind of neat. We'll just see what happens. Alright, so I've got all of his elements mapped over. Go ahead and click OK. I forgot to save my mapping. Let's save mapping. Alright, there we go. And let's save it. Okay, so everything's done rendering here. You can see it took about 141 seconds, so again, just over 2 minutes. Let's go ahead and take a look. So I'm not necessarily happy with the tree up here and how that's looking with the effects. So I'm going to see about changing that. And in this layout, it's called by tree here. Let's go ahead and get everything out of there. Let's go back to import effects. Let's load our mapping file. And on that by tree I had mini trees, but I think what I want to do, let's throw something else in there. Let's try the star. Let's click OK. So there you go. So it's that easy. If you want to make changes, just delete the stuff you don't want. Make sure you delete all the layers in that group or model. Go back in, load your mapping file, change it around, and apply it, and you'll get some different effects. Another way you can easily do this and customize it, make it your own, you could easily copy and paste. All these models and groups have 3 layers each to make it as easy as possible for you guys to copy and paste from one group or model to another. Tried to make it simple and universal for all. So let's go ahead and view our preview window again. Okay, now it's re-rendered. Let's see what that looks like. There we go. Okay, so now that tree is doing some cooler effects. So there you go. That was that easy to, if you aren't happy with how one of your models or groups are looking, you can easily take and remap it out, or copy and paste different effects from different elements in different groups and make it your own. So hope that helps you in your endeavors to map this over to your house, and we look forward to your final video. Okay, so everything looks great. And that's how easy it is to get everything mapped over to your house. So thank you for taking the time to watch this tutorial on how to map over and get the best results possible with the Greatest Showman sequence for your xLights Around the World video. Feel free to, if you have matrices or you want to dig into sigging faces and add those in, the next part 3 video will dive into that briefly and show you how to get those working and up and running.
Ladies and gents, this is the moment you've waited for.